Today's video is learning to walk. So I have spastic cerebral palsy. Here are some statistics from the Center of Disease Control and Prevention about cerebral palsy. Actually, only two. Most people have spastic cerebral palsy. About 77% of everyone with cerebral palsy has spastic cerebral palsy. 58 of us with cerebral palsy as a whole walk independently. When I came home from the hospital, my parents noticed that I wasn't hitting any of the milestones, rolling over, crawling, walking, and they knew about these things because they're teachers, and that's part of what you learn when you're a teacher, spotting the signs of development. And they didn't know it for 11 months why I wasn't developing the same as other children. Today, if that happened, you would know that your baby had cerebral palsy, just right off, because they're better at diagnosing things. But when I was born, they were just not really diagnosed as well as they do today, because their aim was to put these children like me, into institutions and just, forget about them because they're not going to learn or anything, which I've discussed in a different video. So I was crawling until I was about 3.5 years old. And one day I was in the living room playing with my Matchbox cars, and Mom was in a different room with my brother, and I wanted to see my mom. And she wasn't around, so eventually I crawled over to the wall, used the wall to stand up, and used the wall as a crutch to go down the hallway and see Mom, and that's the first time I walked. And after that, I wouldn't walk around, but I would be really unsteady because I walked on my toes, and you don't have balance if you walk on your toes. So I would not even be able to go up the driveway because it was too rocky. So I basically walked around and started using the wall. So my second cousin, was a doctor, and he was a doctor in Boston. He knew about this guy who pioneered an operation for kids with spastic cerebral palsy that enabled the kids to walk. So he got us in contact with Dr. Banks, the doctor, and I went to see him. And when Dr. Banks saw me, he says, "Of course you can walk, you just need some support." So my support came in from this braces. These are very old. They don't really make these anymore. These are aluminum braces. They bend not very easily, and they give you some support, but still, I was walking on my toes, and it's very easy to fall over. Also, I couldn't tie my shoes, obviously, and I couldn't do this strap, so I was totally dependent upon my parents to get my shoes on. That well as they do today, because their aim was to put these children like me, into institutions and just, forget about them because they're not going to learn or anything, which I've discussed in a different video. So I was crawling until I was about 3.5 years old. And one day I was in the living room playing with my Matchbox cars, and Mom was in a different room with my brother, and I wanted to see my mom. she wasn't around, so eventually I crawled over to the wall, used the wall to stand up, and used the wall as a crutch to go down the hallway and see Mom, and that's the first time I walked. And after that, I would walk around, but I would be really unsteady because I walked on my toes, and you don't have balance if you walk on your toes. So I would not even be able to go up the driveway because it was too rocky. So I basically walked around inside using a wall. So my second cousin, was a doctor in Boston. He knew about this guy who pioneered an operation for kids with spastic cerebral palsy that enabled the kids to walk. So he got us in contact with Dr. Banks, the doctor, and I went to see him. And when Dr. Banks saw me, he says, "Of course you can walk, you just need some support." So my support came in from like this braces. These are very old. They don't really make these anymore. These are aluminum braces. They bend not very easily, and they give you some support, but still, I was walking on my toes, and it's very easy to fall over. Also, I couldn't tie my shoes, obviously, and I couldn't do this strap, so I was totally dependent upon my parents to get my shoes on. That's awful frustrating when you're free and you want to do things for yourself, by yourself. So the next shoe came along and it was way better. Here it is. See, it has the same articulating aluminum braces, and it doesn't have this one. Well, this one is Shugu, you see, because I've always worn down the toe, and this one doesn't, because I wasn't wearing them for very long. I'll tell you why next, but I still couldn't tie my shoes. But what I could do is, I am independent because of Velcro. Velcro made me have independence, my first little taste of independence walking or dressing myself, whatever. It was all Velcro. That was a big milestone for me. During this time with the braces, this brace and this brace, I was wearing night hats. So this is a night hat, this is one of mine. I was probably 3 or 4. So this is the size of my leg. And if these things don't bend, they may be very old, but they don't bend. I cannot bend them because they're all plastic. Getting in these things were a pain because I could do this strap. I cannot do this strap because it's under my foot, and my parents would have to help. Imagine how uncomfortable these are. See, I'm trying to get comfortable at night, but I can't because I can't flex my legs, I can't curl up in the ball. I can't sleep on my side. I have to sleep on my back. And then, what happens when you need to go to the bathroom? You can't undo this. So what you have to do is scream for your parents until they hear you, get out of bed and get you out of these casts, and then you go to the bathroom. When you come back, you don't want to go back into this. Like, do you want to not sleep very well? You want to just forgo the cast and curl up, and that's what I did sometimes. Okay, now we're getting to the point of why I knew Dr. Banks at Children's Hospital in Boston. When I was 6, I had an operation. They cut my adductors, which are tendons right here. If this were my body and this was my left leg, adductors right here. And they cut both of them on the right and the left. And also, they cut the heel cord. And what the heel cord did was, I would go from walking on my toe to walking as you do on your foot. More balance, better balance. What the anecdotes did was make me more flexible. Because when you're spastic, you're very, very, very tight. That's why my voice sounds the way it does. And that's why my left arm is very stiff. It's because I'm spastic. I have spastic cerebral palsy. I wasn't in this for my operation. Oh no, I had to imagine this. I was casted from here all the way up to here. I was in the hospital for a week. When you're 6 and you can't tell time, and you don't know about the passage of time, it felt to me like it was a month. And people would drop by and go away because they had jobs. But it felt like I was all alone in the hospital for a month. It was very frustrating because in addition to that, I would spend 6 hours on my back, 6 hours on my front. And I liked it better on my front because I was in a sling above the actual bed because I was so small that I had toys on the bed below me and I could play with toys and it was okay. But when I went on my back, I was staring at the ceiling. And there's only so much ceiling staring you could take. So that was hard. The pain was intense. It was so intense that they had to recast the foot of one of my both of my casts because I was in so much pain. I broke these. See, I can't even break them now, but I was in so much pain that I broke them then. Then I went home. And I spent most of the summer in a body cast. I went to Hawaii in August. And I was going on the plane in a wheelchair with my brother because it was just easier. I had crutches, but it's slow and it's crowded and I would get knocked over by the crowds. I went on the plane in a wheelchair and I went to Oahu where Honolulu is. It's a state capital because that's where my aunts, my uncles, and my cousins live. While we were in Oahu, I went to the Bishop Museum, which is, well, you've seen it, it's on the Wi-Fi. Well, every Wi-Fi, well, the old one, the new one, they showed a lot more of the interior on the old one. But the new one, it's just when they go to McGarrett's office, that's the Bishop Museum, that's actually the palace. And it's museum now. It's part Whining Museum, and part just island memorabilia. So I was looking at the memorabilia, and I remember that coming from New England, a lot of buildings are very New England like here, of course. They would be, but also a lot of buildings there, the old ones, are very New England like, and it's very hard for me as a 6-year-old to fathom. It's because the whalers came from Massachusetts and Connecticut, places like that, and to Hawaii to get more food so they wouldn't have scurvy. And with them they brought missionaries who enforced their viewpoints on the natives, which happens everywhere. And they also brought their buildings and everything else. And that's why it looks a little bit like New England parts of Hawaii. They had awesome whaling spears and all the whaling things in the Bishop Museum. I was looking at every day. I didn't realize, but I left my crutches at the beginning of the exhibit, and I pulled myself along on the railing just like I had used the wall 3 years ago. And I went down the exhibit, and my parents found me with my crutches at one end and I was somewhere down closer to the end. And from then on I walked in Hawaii because crutches are basically cumbersome if you don't need to use them. So when I came back to Boston, I walked off the plane. When I had gone on the plane in a wheelchair, and I walked ever since. If you like this video, give it a thumbs up, like, subscribe if you want to, and I'll definitely make more videos like this and of other subjects. I hope you have a good day.